All right, welcome everyone to New Polity's podcast. I'm here with Joe Heschmeyer. Joe, thanks for coming on.
It's great to be here.
I was doing my very best radio announcer voice because you're from Catholic Answers and you're a radio man, even if you're a podcaster, I say.
It's true, although I think both you and I are originally from the world of Catholic blogs.
Yes, and we're going to, unfortunately, whether or not this plummets the amount of listeners, we're going to start by talking about the world of Catholic blogs, circa, 2009 to 2012. I don't know. It was a brief moment. It's a shining moment.
True.
But here's what was cool about it. And you'll forgive a trip down nostalgia lane a little bit. So I had a blog called Bad Catholic. What was your blog?
Shameless Popery.
Shameless Popery. And we were just talking with a friend, Matthew Warner, who had a blog, Fallible Blogma. And you'll notice all of these titles are awesome.
They're fun. Yeah, people had fun.
And it's not quite, you can't quite do that in the same way. But it was this weird time, pre-social media. I mean, there were social media platforms, but it hadn't become ubiquitous. Like you could not have a social media account or have like just Facebook, and it was
and also the stuff people posted on Facebook back in the day. I don't know if you remember the old format said it'd be like Mark is feeling an ellipsis and then an open, or Mark is ellipsis. And then you were expected to just fill in the prompt. Mm-hmm. And so now when you go back and read this stuff, I was thinking about this morning, actually, as I was preparing. I don't know if it was because of our shared history here or just because I'm getting old and nostalgic. That's beautiful. But you go back and it's actually really cringy. You go back and you read these things where you're like, I wrote this 15 years ago and it's just so stupid.
The idea of like a machine that prompts people to tell you their feelings is wild. I mean, remember poking? There was that brief moment. They pulled that pretty fast, but you could just poke people kind of with no real sense of what you were communicating.
No, it's a weird, I mean, that's a weird social interaction. To be like, okay, wait a second. The thing you decided to do was we're going to pretend that you're poking a stranger or maybe poking a friend. There's not a lot of normal interactions in real human life where you poke someone and it's normal.
I think because of that, it had a certain lightness to it that as it became more of a deliberately designed, I mean, it was always deliberate, I suppose, but a more psychologically manipulative design. Yes. You think about now where you have these options of reaction. It's been a little while, but you get that like option of reaction of laughing, of a heart, of a like, where it really does kind of seem to fit, but then also define the possible reactions that you can have to something.
Right, you cannot dislike. You can like a post, you cannot dislike a post. You can show an angry reaction.
Right.
That could be angry at the poster or the underlying subject matter. I mean, it's ambiguous.
And that's ambiguous, and anger makes you a little bit happy. So like you're glad to be mad. You're showing people who you are. And so there was a real, and generally there was a movement away from text, like to explain yourself. The era that we kind of started blogging in had a real belief, and not just like a fairy tale, but like a belief that you could explain yourself and you could explain yourself clearly and you could evidence your points and you could really change the world. You could change people. And so there was this group, not by any kind of plan, but there's a group of Catholic bloggers getting like WordPress or .blogspot.coms, which had the RSS feed model of subscription where usually on the right-hand sidebar, and I say this like it's like ancient Egyptian sort of tombs.
Might as well be.
But you had all the other blogs that would link you to theirs, and that created this sort of community of writers. And what I was thinking about in regards to this was, what was happening there? Well, I think there was a belief and an attempt to just simply move print culture online.
Yeah.
Like there is this sense that, okay, we write, we read. And what the computer here in the digital age allows us to do is to take that and do it in a way where we can be more linked to each other in the doing. Like you can comment on this. I'll read your comment. And I'll be like, oh, I was totally wrong. Or more likely, no, you're an idiot. But then I can find what you write.
Right.
And I would expect writing of you and I expect writing of myself. And it would just be online. And that could have a sort of stable existence where you could have a line of continuity between the world of print and then your computer.
And there was much more a sense of it being a conversation because of the interconnectivity, that even a book is a discrete act and object. And so you can have books that are responses and replies. And so you sort of read this book and then you read the reply, but this was much more like that. Like there was just this real sense that you are having a conversation. It was normal to have a reply to a reply to a reply, where you could just expect people were following these multi-day, multi-week sort of back and forth.
I wonder about that. Like how much of it is that I don't feel the patience for it now. But I recall not just having engaging in those comments that would go back and forth over days, weeks, but also remembering where conversations had happened in comment boxes on blog posts that themselves were like a work of reference that I'd go back to, because I was like, oh, I remember when this guy was in conversation with that guy and we were all on the sidelines just watching it happen.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you remember the blog Called to Communion.
Yeah.
But so it's a bunch of Reformed Protestants who became Catholic, and they kept all of the thoroughness that they had as Calvinists, where I thought I liked to write. I mean, these guys would, so you will find, Brian Cross and these other guys would have hundreds of comments on their original article, but they weren't just like good job or you idiot or something like that. No, they'd be these multi-paragraph long replies sometimes, then replies to replies. And frequently in the course of that, someone would say something really brilliant, or someone would raise an objection, or there'd be some really provocative point. And so you'd end up linking back to not even the original post, but to, comment 450 on it. And so this really was, it was a unique kind of moment. And as you said, sort of the patience for it.
Yeah.
This is so tied to the medium. Like you cannot, if you were to make a YouTube channel where you just read any of these things, it would be tedious. It would be unwatchable, and people would click away. Yeah. And you would be completely bombed by the algorithm.
Totally.
It would say, oh, your click-through rate's really low, audience retention's really low, 30% of people are still watching at the 30-second mark, and you would never see the light of day. It would not be served up on anybody's feed. And I think there's something there. Neil Postman, if you're familiar with Amusing Ourselves to Death, just the notion that, kind of to take Marshall McLuhan's line that the medium is the message. Each of these different media of communication, they're not neutral. So a print media versus visual medium, those are going to be completely different animals, not just in terms of what it looks like, but even in terms of how you say what you're trying to say. Yeah. And to some extent, what you're saying at all. So I know in the YouTube world, you can sort of get away with 1 to 2 replies. Mm-hmm. If somebody makes a video and you respond to it, they can respond to your response.
Sure.
And you can maybe respond to theirs. And it should probably just be done at that point.
Right.
Because I've found this, I think everyone involved in YouTube finds this, that part 1 of a series or the original, that's going to be the one that does the best. And then you just get diminishing returns over time. And understandably in a certain way, that somebody isn't going to want to tune into episode 3 and haven't, followed the first 2 episodes. So you're going to get a certain amount of drop off. But as a result, there is a strong deterrent to those kind of back and forth. So there's a strong deterrent to the sort of conversation we took for granted and that you could totally get away with in the past because the RSS feed wasn't algorithmically sensitive.
Right,
it was just
sent what you wrote.
Yeah, it sent what you wrote, and then people would read it or they didn't, and so you would just grab them with your intro, or frequently you'd just say, so-and-so said this, and then they'd read that and then be like, oh yeah, I wonder what you would say to that.
Yeah, I wonder if the medium of writing at all, I try to think about what's different between that, and I apologize. I hate talking about podcasting on podcasts because it makes me self-aware of like I'm in a room with cameras. But I had a fellow tell me I really needed to refute Nick Fuentes on some points, and I said, okay, honestly, like I don't really listen to podcasts. Like, what does he say? And he's like, oh, well, you gotta listen to him. He says all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, no, but like, you want me to engage in this in some way. Right. I have a vague, like, I understand vaguely what he thinks, but can you give me his argument? And the guy could not. He could only say, you got to listen to this podcast. So then I'm looking at the podcast and I'm like, so you're telling me that I have to listen to what seems to be 900,000 hours of yes. of argument. It's like, it'd be like trying to like debate Rush Limbaugh as a figure. Idea, right. It doesn't make sense. Yes. It's like, and I realize this is not to say anything about that, besides to say that what I love about writing is that you decide something, mm-hmm. and when you write it down, and it's not like you can't be careless, but you're kind of held to account for carelessness because it's written. It's like you chose those words.
Right.
Yes, it's an evanescent sort of medium as opposed to the paper, and even you'd be even worse off if you chose to carve those particular words into marble. But you know what? You've set them down in some way. Whereas within the speech medium, as you do it, speech doesn't work like that. You don't like think a thought, choose it, and then say it. That's not how it works. You're in a dialogue where you're not as responsible for your own words.
I mean, people misspeak pretty frequently. In fact, this is one of the things, if you've ever seen like transcriptions of conversations, frequently you can actually see where they fall apart even grammatically.
Yeah. That
most people's spoken word doesn't correspond to the rules of grammar for the written word, where you start a thought and the thought sort of meanders around and it sort of lands somewhere, it sort of doesn't. You can punctuate that however you want. Yeah. I mean, even what I'm saying literally right now would be, I know. It's weak from a written perspective. I would not write what I just said.
Totally.
Because you could make it a lot tighter.
Yeah. So what do you think that world of, bad Catholic, shameless popery, what was the obviously like we were trying to grab at identities and brands, and there was some kind of mm-hmm. element of that, and it seemed playful to me at the time. It seems to have like a parallel in social media that you are your own brand. Everyone kind of represents themselves. But I think what would have been odd in that sort of post-print, pre-social media phase would have been like a blog with your face, with your name.
Yeah, completely.
That would have actually been kind of strange.
Yes.
Like you were expected to take on an almost, was it just like an imitation of print culture? Like you took on a sort of quasi-journal, like, I'm not me, I am shameless popery. Or like, what? I don't know. Do you ever wonder what we were up to?
That's a great question. And this is one of those things where you don't know how much the conventions shape you until you look back on a prior convention that you were a part of and then realize how weird and affected it sounds, where you're not even aware of the affectations. And I'm sort of aware of this right now with YouTube, that I speak on YouTube in a slightly different way than I speak in real life. I try to keep it as normal and natural and everything else, but there is a certain sense where you're in front of a camera or you're in front of a keyboard. And there's something very strange about writing into the void or speaking into the void, where you hope someone's going to read this, but you're not sitting across from them the way I am with you right now.
Sure, yeah.
So it lends itself to a certain kind of affectation. And I think that is something that we see in like choosing shameless popery, bad Catholic, et cetera, where on the one hand, we felt the need to adopt a certain sort of persona in the original sense of this is the mask through which I'm speaking. This is I'm in this role right now.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, I think we were self-aware enough to make it more playful.
Right.
And you saw that not just in the Catholic space, I think pretty broadly. People often had a somewhat semi-ironic relationship to whatever handle they adopted.
Totally.
And you see that with people's usernames still.
Yeah.
Part of that's just for privacy. You don't want to use your real name necessarily. I remember when I started the Shameless Popery account, one of the big struggles I had was whether or not to use my real name, because I was a law student at the time. And I had this awareness, like if I use my real name, this is going to hurt my job prospects. Like I'm writing these like really strident Catholic things, and I'm in a legal culture that is not pro-Catholicism or pro-religion. And I just thought, like, well, I'm not going to be a coward. I'm going to use my own name. So I used it that way sort of in spite of myself, but still didn't really write anything super personal. Sure. So my name was on it, but I wasn't just like, here's what's going on in my life for the most part. You know, I might mention like graduating law school is going to be a little crazy. It's going to be, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was not super autobiographical.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering too about that, like the relationship of the individual, like the speaker to the spoken message or the writer to the written word, how much you sort of allow yourself into play. I think it's a great question anyway. So,
well, I do think that taking on the mask is sort of a acknowledgement that the medium is real. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that we've lost. There's sort of how do I put it? When something is closer to the real but isn't, it's almost worse. And so there's something about the quasi-reality of the social media age where you are wearing a mask, you are using a medium, but you have this ability to appear at like authentically you and there in a way that's misleading, I think, and even to yourself.
Right. I think even to yourself is important, because I think a lot of people are trying to be themselves on camera, on screen, you know, behind the mic, but it is never. It just cannot be.
No, and it's like the modesty is sort of a virtue there where it's funny. It's just like there's a certain modesty in being funny about the depersonalization of the medium. You say, okay, I'm not going to try to be like intimately, personally myself on something that will not allow me to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, why be vulnerable in a way if you're not, you know what I mean? Like you acknowledge the distance. You say, well, this, and that was always important because I started kind of young at this, and I did have this temptation to think of writing and speaking as what saves. It's like there's holiness of life, and I'm going to kind of do it by becoming holiness of writer. And it's not true. It's like, look, at the end of the day, you're going to be judged by how you responded to the person on the street, not on the basis of how awesome your essay was. Like, there's just no way.
I mean, you might say something in the comments that you're judged for, but right, you can't.
Right, of course.
The problem with all of those things, whether it's writing or YouTube today or making a podcast, these are these very intentional and deliberate acts.
Yeah.
And the temptation we can all fall into is imagining that holiness is the stuff we do very intentionally. Sure. That this is my time where I'm going to serve God. I'm going to go to church right now. I'm going to help the poor right now. I'm going to do these things right now. And frequently the moments that are the make or break moments for sanctity are precisely the moments we didn't choose, where something was thrust upon us. And so, when you know I'm on right now, somebody is asking a question and they need an answer and they're going through a spiritual crisis, by all means, you can do some real good there, and you might even feel good about it afterwards. But don't be deluded by that, right? Because a lot of times it's, oh, my wife said something and she needed compassion and patience and attentiveness. Was I stuck in my head thinking about how I was going to reply to that other person who was making some public bid, or was I attuned to this incarnate kind of bid that's the stuff that makes or breaks. Well, if I may, one thing, kind of jogging back to the thing about the use of names, just pulling the curtain back a little bit, the YouTube world really promotes the use of a single identity. Yeah. So your identity can be your brand name, Mr. Beast, that sort of thing, or it frequently is just your name. Mm-hmm. But to have Joe Heschmeyer and Shameless Potpourri out there, or to have Matt Fradd and Pints with Aquinas, or to have, any of these things, you can run into the problem that people get to know two separate people and don't ever connect the two. Sure. So if you've got like Mark Barnes and you've got Bad Catholic, and then eventually people are like, wait, you wrote that? And so as a result, there's this tendency to simplify the branding by just having everything be your name online, or your name plus show, or your name plus podcast. Yeah. And if you watch, you'll see a lot of people moving in that direction, where back in the day, they would have had some clever title, and now it's just the so-and-so show. And I think something has been lost there, sort of. That is just pure nostalgia on my end. Yeah, but it does encourage, as you were saying, the sort of false intimacy. Mm-hmm. A sort of sense of, we're just getting the actual person now.
I loved the, I love theater. And so, I mean, I think actually everyone loves theater if they're honest, but But I loved that idea that I was reading some like thing that had been couched as a entity, not just a person, and that there was a person though that I hadn't met yet who was Shameless Potpourri, who was I'm like, even negatively it was fun. Like I remember when I was on Pathos. You remember Pathos?
I remember Pathos.
You were I
was invited to be part of Pathos. I deliberated it.
Are they still? For a while. I don't know. They're still around. I don't know.
There's still some stuff that happens. I think Dave Armstrong still does some stuff on Pathos.
There's it was just funny because there was like so it was a kind of scooping up.
Mm-hmm.
It was the man. We didn't realize it. Yes. But Pathos was like all this sort of early pre-social media blogs that were happening started to get kind of compiled, and really what was doing it was Google's new ad programming.
AdSense. Yeah.
AdSense. So they always had advertising, but at some point, and I don't know dates on this, but at some point, it became profitable to let people run their own ads through Google and give them a cut of it. So you're basically a third party to an advertisement, Google and you. And then it became profitable for another party to scoop up people who are already, you can see it happening. Now they can be imagined as providing content. And then on the content, you stick the ads. And I did it and joined up. And then immediately you realize this problem where people would send me messages like, hey, they just were like, like advertising, like, I don't know, like IVF on your website. And so there's this initial crisis where AdSense wasn't aligned to the content. And then they started getting better at that. And so you have like Catholic ads on Catholic sites, and it became, and then ad blocker probably changed that whole thing. But thank goodness.
These days they'll just take all the content and make it an AI summary, and they keep 100% of the profit.
You can see that kind of like, what do you think? We kind of discussed what has been lost, but what do you think made that change? Because I think now you could not quite expect. I mean, you can still do it. Like, of course, you still like have a name, put up a blog, say some things. But I think the ubiquity of social media means that it would make no sense to do that apart from a Twitter account and now Substack. That's sort of the new way of doing it.
I have a certain amount of hope connected to Substack.
Yeah, I know. Do tell, but I have a sympathy there too.
Yeah, Substack gets a lot of what we were striving for. You can have a sort of brand within this broader thing. Yep. Because of the way the model is set up, it's cleaner where you don't have a bunch of ads. It's just less annoying. Yeah. And it's kind of heralding the return or possible return of super long form blogging, where you want something that is substantial, but is more immediate and maybe more conversational than a book.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real place for that. There's a lot of people who are excellent, lengthy writers.
Totally.
I guess we don't need, it's self-evident. I don't need to give examples. So I think there's some hope with that. So, okay, what's been lost? Why has it been lost? Let's talk about that first. One of the major inflection points was the creation of the iPhone. Okay. And you see this in a lot of surprising ways. So, for example, the number of pedestrian accidents had been going down, and then it starts to go up, with the creation of the smartphone. And it's not any surprise what's going on. You've got a driver looking at their phone, hitting a pedestrian looking at their phone. And people are just less distracted, or less focused. They're more distracted. Another thing that is surprising, maybe it shouldn't be surprising to me, the New York Times, I believe it was, just had a piece recently where they talked about the fertility crisis connected to smartphones.
Yeah, so this was one of those headlines where I said, I should probably read that, and didn't. So you have the honor of telling me what was in that article.
It's an interesting thesis, and you say, how would you possibly prove that? There's so many other things going on. Well, it turns out, in 2008, when the iPhone was released, it was only on AT&T's network. So if you isolate AT&T users and their fertility compared to everyone else, they suddenly start to become less likely to have kids shortly after 2008. Okay. That starts to look more like we actually found a cause. Now, monocausal analysis is never correct on almost anything, meaning very few things in life are related to one cause. They estimate this is about a third to half of the decline in fertility.
Well, and
that's huge, but it's massive. It's not alone.
Well, and it's just not unreasonable.
Right.
What reasons did they give?
In terms of all the other reasons?
No. Like the causal mechanism of action of iPhone to low fertility, lower fertility.
I think that people are just becoming more isolated, and they're like, you have couples who in the evening are each on their phone, vegging out at the end of the day, rather than spending time together in such a way that would be conducive to bringing new life into the world.
It is not an alluring posture.
Exactly. You're looking away from each other. Or you're looking vaguely in the same direction, but you're looking at screens instead of one another. Yeah. And so there's that breakdown where even at home, even when you're together, are you actually with one another, or are you each in your own private world?
Well, surely in the view of people who are wrong about demography, this is a great gain. Contraception plus iPhone, and we've solved.
Yeah, if you want to wipe out the next generation or so, this would be a good way to do it. People will very happily. I mean, you almost imagine those experiments they do with mice, where you just give them something like cocaine, where they become addicted to it, and they stop doing everything else that they should be doing, and they eventually just die because they become so addicted to the dopamine rush or whatever that they give up on everything else in their life. Well, the phone is that. It's this little drip of dopamine that has been literally scientifically honed to tap into your psychology. So everything from the red circle for notifications, where it looks like blood and it immediately sends an alert signal to the brain, and you almost can't leave it alone. Whether you're curious or not, you just sort of have to. It is almost an OCD sort of compulsion where you have to push on that and then look to see what's going on. That sort of approach. So imagine that, and now apply that to reading a long form. You've got 22,000 words. Oh, you just got a notification. You just got an alert. Your phone is buzzing. Somebody's texting you. You've got, a song you were going to listen to. You've got another app. You've got a game that just told you your lives are recharged. And it's not surprising to see people can't stick with the written word on their phone in that way.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
And, like even compared to early smartphones, like modern smartphones are just a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. Mm-hmm. Like you could veg out on a smartphone back in the day, but there were fewer things. And so you had fewer, this is like trying to read a book in the middle of a construction site.
Sure, yeah.
There's just so much chaos all around you that it's very hard to get anywhere with it.
I was really enjoying, his name's Ed Zitron. I've actually never said his name. He's got a blog called Where's Your Ed At? And he's writing about Silicon Valley culture and AI. And I will say it was this marvelous experience. Like it was lengthy. I mean, it was even by early blogging standards, it was quite long. But I was loving it.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I was mad, and I was like mad with him. So I was like, give me more about the silliness of the Silicon Valley culture. But so I do think it is possible. But I think you're quite right, and I think that it's there's like these worrying things that I realize are just symbolic coincidences, but the way that the iPhone and smartphones are described as arriving in generations, coupled with the fact that our fertility is apparently something that we'll leave behind for the sake of the smartphones, does seem to just has a certain organic quality to it.
Yes.
Well, and because they designed the things, without any hard edges. So when they designed the iPhone, one of the things they wanted to do is get rid of buttons, get rid of edges, because they wanted to make it more like a natural, organic object, like something that you could find in a living thing. As opposed to something that clearly had its own production kind of apparent, like it came from a factory. Yeah. So it has a sort of smoothness and immediate fittedness to hand. So anyways, that's just, I don't get conspiratorial. I don't get too conspiratorial. Seems like weird.
Yeah. I mean, there are fairly explicit attempts to make these artificial things feel more natural. Yeah. And of course, I know you have strong opinions about chatbots and AI that pretends to be human and all of this.
I talk about, I've ruined friendships, and it's just...
You just, tell Claude. But there clearly is this very intentional drive to do that, of having things that imitate nature. I don't think the imitation of nature is inherently evil by any stretch. Gaudi's Sagrada Familia is supposed to have this almost forest-like quality. It's a cathedral that matches the feel of a forest in a certain way. And when you hear it described and then you go look at it, you're like, oh, I see. I see what's going on here. I see this you don't forget that you are in a cathedral. You're not going to mistake it for, a rainforest cafe or a real rainforest.
Well, it's like precisely by trying to be natural, he was also the most artificial in the sense that when you see a material and you know it to be stone, but it is doing something like a tree, it's incredible.
Right.
And it wows you. But the difference between that and then the kind of quote unquote naturalness of the phone is that you don't have a sense of its actual raw material. It's like it's just an object, but you don't have a sense of, oh wow, look what man has done with metal and glass and who knows what else.
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum there, because when you look at a wall, you rarely, unless you're a builder, contemplate the architect who made the wall. Because there's a certain way it doesn't draw attention to itself. But when you see a natural or an artificial thing imitating a natural thing, but in a way that doesn't go into the uncanny valley, like the things I find really weird. I don't know how ubiquitous this is, but some of the suburbs around Kansas City, they don't like cell phone towers, so they'll make them into fake trees.
Oh, that is weird.
Yes.
Keep the towers.
Exactly. And my 2-year-old noticed this. Yeah. He said something like, that tree's a robot.
Yeah.
Like he noticed there was something weird about it.
Yeah. Well, imitation and simulation are two different things.
Yes. Right. Say more about that.
Well, there's just and I guess representation's another word that should be thrown in there. Simulation has the intention to deceive. So it's trying to bring you as close as possible to the real, but in order to be able to exchange the experience of reality for this other one. Whereas imitation doesn't necessarily do that.
Yeah.
Imitation is the imitation of something else. And when you experience an imitation, when you experience representation, you experience both of those at once. And it's not to say there's not problems with imitation or something like that, but simulation is different.
Yeah, I think that's well said. The whole simulacra, just this idea that you're trying to be something that you're not, but you're not just laying your cards on the table about it.
Right, exactly.
Creates a sort of unease among the person who encounters it and finds it uncanny.
Right, because you're aware, you kind of figure out the simulation. If it's a good simulation, you can be fooled and then unfooled once you have a realization. But then you starts to move right up against questions of trust and questions like human questions of, am I being lied to? Am I being told the truth? And I think that's, again, going back to the social media question, that kind of move towards the realism of presence. Like as you get closer, you somehow get farther because you're moving closer to simulation, and not the possible cards on the table. I love that image of representation of imitation. It's like, I'm not here. Let's all look at me like I'm this the bad Catholic thing. And then because to know me would be, as you can clearly see, would be to get behind all that and then find the writer and find the author. Yeah. You just say it. Whereas to say like, I am here. This is my LinkedIn. This is an actual picture of my face. This is what I do. This is who I am. And I'm writing to you now. Like that to me already had the kind of uncanny, like, quasi-personal presence thing happening in an early stage before chatbots or anything I might complain about today.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, with the chatbot, it's very clear what the demarcation is. This is a non-human, non-personal thing, and it is simulating humanity and personality.
It's designed to simulate a person.
But in the case of what we're describing here, there's this other thing that's a little more morally ambiguous and not evil. Like it's not bad to write a resume and put a cover letter and put up a LinkedIn and try to get a job. I think LinkedIn's a great example of that. But I think we all have the experience also of knowing the person and being like, oh, there's a certain level of artificiality to this.
Yeah.
They're not even lying. They're just like, they're on their best behavior in a way that feels stuffy and inauthentic.
They're posing,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. So how do you then deal, like as someone who's kind of undergone the same shift and gone from I think it's fair to say like a earnest attempt at the imitation of the print medium, only now online, as a sort of starting point, and then the very playful enjoyment of the new possibilities that led to, and then it seems like this introduction of from various angles the ways in which that world became impossible, and now you're still a writer, you're still a thinker, you're still doing your thing, but you're in the algorithmic world, the algorithmic age. Any advice for us out here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so there's two separate questions there. One is kind of like, how do I do it? And two, what is the advice?
Sure.
I'm going to focus on the second one because I think there's good advice, which is to cultivate attention. So Simone Weil has, that's spelled W-E-I-L for anyone who wants to look this up, just like you would have expected. She has a letter to some Dominicans on attention and the virtue of study. And I don't remember the title of it, unfortunately. This is where I would normally furiously Google and take myself away from the conversation. Sorry. But the hypocrisy of that is too glaring even for me. So you'll just have to do the Googling yourself. Yeah. Just look up Simone Weil, Dominicans, study, attention, and hopefully there's a PDF. And it's got a long title, but it's all a letter that she writes to this Dominican priest about the connection between the virtue of study and the virtue of prayer and charity. And it is a masterpiece. It is one of those life-changing essays where you read it and you're just like, oh, I can't believe that these things that now feel so intuitive would have never come into my mind before or on their own. Where she talks about St. John Vianney, and she talks about, in general, that the faculty in study shouldn't just be that you like the thing you happen to be studying, but that you should learn to love study itself, and you should learn to love an undistracted attention given to a thing because it is true and worth understanding. And in fact, the thing that is hard for you to make sense of may be the thing that helps you the best to grow in this, and that this is really good. And so she suggests, as a hypothesis that I think is really interesting, that the reason St. John Vianney was so effective as a priest is because he was such a bad student, that he had no natural aptitude to just be good at Latin, for example. And so he famously struggled in school, but it meant he was struggling. It wasn't struggling like he was lazy. He was struggling like he was actually fighting. Like he was actually, what came easily to some people came to him with great difficulty. And so he had to really build up this faculty to study, meaning he had to build up the faculty to pay attention, even when the answers didn't immediately reveal themselves to him. And Simone Weil says this is what prayer is, that you give your unqualified, undistracted attention to God, and you have to just be patient, and the answers may not come in your time, and you have to be really good at just sitting with God. But then she makes this further extension to say this is also what is needed with the encounter with your neighbor, that you have to just give them your undistracted attention and sit with them, even when you're not immediately getting whatever you're hoping to get out of them, that it might just be the charitable act of loving presence. And so these three things that we often talk about as these three unrelated things are really the ability to just sit without distraction when it is not easy to sit without distraction. And whether that's somebody not getting to the point in a story, whether it's God not giving you what you want immediately in prayer, whether it's a book you're trying to make sense of and are really struggling to make sense of, the more you build up the virtue to do that, the better you will be as a scholar, as a saint, as a friend, and this will transform your whole life. Mm-hmm. And so the way to do that is just don't click on the notifications. Like, commit yourself to say, okay, I am going to read for the next, and start with something manageable. I'm going to read for the next 15 minutes. And if my phone buzzes or beeps, I'll check it in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you do that, and you just sit with it, and you don't give up when it's hard. You don't give up when you start to feel impatient. You just persevere in it, and you build up the habitus. Like, the only way to do it is to do it. Mm-hmm. And you do it enough, and it gets a little easier to do.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, especially in applying that to the neighbor. I'm so guilty of that, where I am my eyes are there, but yes. My head is not.
Yeah, I mean, frequently, you're a thinker. I know this about you. And so I suspect you can relate to this fact where sometimes somebody will say something really intriguing, and my mind is immediately somewhere else, thinking about the implications of that. We're not in the direction they're going, just like, oh, that'd be an interesting thing to explore. And then I've like half written an episode in my mind, and then I realize they're still talking, and I've completely... I couldn't tell you the last, 45 seconds of what they've said because and it's not intended to be uncharitable or anything. It's just this, oh, here's this cool idea. But to even recognize in that, so one of the great difficulties in prayer is realizing we want God not for what he gives us, but for the giver of the gift himself. Yep. And so not to allow God's gifts to get in the way of the giver of the gifts is something that and this is one of the reasons God allows us to have the gift of desolation. When he takes away those other gifts. Because if you have constant consolation, you can start to get into prayer because of the good feelings, because of the spiritual consolation you get out of it. And what you want out of prayer is not spiritual consolation. What you want out of prayer is God. And he is infinitely bigger than the consolation you might get from an encounter with him. And so sometimes he'll withdraw the consolations so that you don't lose sight of what you're there for. It's like if you are a kid and you go to McDonald's with your grandpa, is it because of the McDonald's or because of the grandpa? Yeah. A good way to find out is, what if you're not going to go to McDonald's that day? Do you still want to go see grandpa?
Yeah. Totally.
And this is what desolation is in a nutshell. So likewise, when you're talking to a person in conversation, they are giving you gifts. They're giving you these ideas, these things that are really intriguing. And you want to run down all these rabbit trails. But can you just put those rabbit trails to one side and say, I want the person, I don't want the ideas. Yeah. Or I don't just want the ideas. They can stay. Yeah. They're perennial. They'll last. Yeah. But this person, this is a privileged moment in time to be with this person.
It's beautiful. They always describe the saints as having this quality. I remember reading this about John Paul II, St. John Paul II, and then also reading about St. Mother Teresa, and realizing, there's like, this is something saints actually do. There's a definable quality, and everyone says that when you're with them, you really think that somehow you are the most important person in the world to them for the whole duration of the time that you're with them.
Yeah, because these are people who are great at prayer. And so that faculty, which is so atrophied in modern man, they have built up through perseverance in prayer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'll take that advice, 15 minutes, and just ignore everything else. Happy to do that. I'd also say, reading something you really enjoy is helpful, because I think I found that the utilitarian sort of part of your brain in this world, because everything is instrumental on a screen, where you start to think that something is useless if it's not leading you immediately to something else.
Right.
Because that's what buttons are. Buttons are things, you don't push them for their own sake. You push them for, well, maybe some people do, but you push them, get a result. And there's just a lot of those buttons constantly in our purview. And it's one of the things that worries me about having a generalized culture of chatbot conversations. Beyond the question of personal simulation, there's a question of the use of our faculty in such a way that we're always achieving results. And like, that's the whole mode, is like you sit down, and I think it was Majesty or May I forget which one, but it's like, what can I help you accomplish today? And so you're immediately like, I'm accomplishing stuff. And to use the conversational faculty like that seems to be directing us away from the possibility of enjoyment, where enjoyment is just living with the thing. And that's hard. Attention and enjoyment seem to be related, whereas if I can always convince myself that what I'm reading is important for some other goal, then I can stick with it a little more.
It's true. This is one of the things I was really confused by and immediately resistant to, was learning that contemplative truth is higher than practical truth.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I've been taught that message, that everything matters if it'll help you accomplish something. Yeah. I mean, even ironically enough, even in this conversation, it's like, oh, look, you build up this faculty, you'll study better, you'll be a better friend.
And then I'll use that in order to be more powerful. Right? Yeah, totally.
And there's nothing wrong with practical truth. And there's nothing wrong with starting with the things that you're going to get more consolation out of and that are a little easier. You've got to start somewhere. But there is that sense in which things done for their own good are worth doing. Whether that's going with the text that's difficult and feels unrewarding, or being with the friend who's difficult and feels unrewarding, or going to pray when it feels difficult and unrewarding, that these things are worth doing of themselves. And the more you believe in that and the more you give yourself over to that, it actually does become easier.
Yeah. One other example is having birthday celebrations for 1-year-olds. So what are you doing? Like, they're not going to remember it. You're achieving nothing. You think you're making memories? You're not making memories. And it's like, right, you're just celebrating that they were born. It's real.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't remember if it was either Nate Bargatze or Jim Gaffigan was talking about taking his little kids to Disney World and someone telling him they're not going to remember anything. He's like, should I just leave them locked up in the closet all day? Like, what do you expect me to do? Like, of course, the fact that they're enjoying it now is good.
Yeah, I know.
Whether they remember they enjoyed it later is okay. Totally. But you don't just wait to give someone good things if they're going to remember later that you gave them good things. It is fine for them to have a good experience right now because it is a good experience for them.
It's weird that you have to defend that, but it really is not. And I don't just mean like to other people or something. I mean to myself. It's like, this is enjoyable because it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
done.
Exactly.
Do you? We're gonna go. Thank you for taking the trip down. Memory lane there with me. I appreciate it. Do you? Maybe with all of this in my head, I wanted to ask what you thought of the latest encyclical. Like,
I have to be honest, I've only read part of it.
Okay,
I really liked the parts that I read. There were parts where I thought the language could have been a little tighter, admittedly.
I've been struggling with the English translation is a little odd. I don't think that's just I don't know the original language that it was written in. It doesn't seem to have been written in just one language.
Okay.
Usually Italian's the drafting language, but all the Romance languages are doing something very different than the English. So I have
not done any kind of cross-linguistic analysis.
I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying part of that, and I don't know how much because, I can only understand so much, but part of that might be.
Yeah, I think billing it as an encyclical on AI is a misunderstanding.
Yeah. It's funny. I have a friend, Ruben Slife, who said this. Where he said, he never said he was writing an encyclical on AI. He said he was writing an encyclical on protecting the human person in the age of AI.
Right.
I think that's what he did.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it'd be like saying Rerum Novarum is an encyclical about the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
It's about so much more than that. It's about the human person in the face of the changes brought about in the midst of the Industrial Revolution. So after the Industrial Revolution is over and done with, the human dignity part remains, and it remains a relevant document. And I think the same thing is happening here. I know just talking to people, so I've been at your Catholic social teaching masterclass, and multiple people have talked about the human limitations part as just being this really beautiful portion of the encyclical. And yeah, if you're going in there expecting like, what are the new rules about AI? That's a misunderstanding of what to expect.
Totally. Although I think it's in the pipeline. All right. Joe Heschmeyer, thanks so much. It's really an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And anytime you're back in Steubenville, hop on.
I like it.
All right. God bless everyone. Have a good one. This New Polity podcast was brought to you by us. That's right, just us. We're not part of any other media organization or a larger institution. We're a nonprofit that relies entirely on you. And we haven't heard from you yet, which is messed up. Please donate to New Polity if you like this podcast. We're a nonprofit supported entirely by our listeners. You can donate right now by going to newpolity.com/donate and making a large donation. Thanks.